Welcome to episode 1 of my year of tarot. My name is Shannon. I'm the Wisdom Wench. I've been with the tarot for 17 years and reading professionally and for others for almost 10 of those. The tarot is an old friend and a confidant, and I'm so excited and honoured to be the person to introduce it to you. So let's start with what is tarot. Tarot is a tool. It can be used in almost any context and any personal practice. It can be used secularly or religiously or spiritually, and it can be used as a tool for psychology. The first part of learning the tarot is learning where it comes from and how did we get to where we are today. What kind of lineage are we a part of when we start using and learning the tarot? Part of this is learning about divination. What is it? Why we do it, how have we done it historically, and how did we get to where we are today. Generally, when people first get into the tarot, the cards come first and then the history and learning about it comes second. I think it's really important to learn the history first, learn where it comes from, learn what you are becoming a part of, and learn that there's a really long and exciting lineage behind the tarot, behind divination with cards. Understanding where the tarot comes from will help you create your own solid practice of the tarot that you can then adapt to suit your needs best. Don't worry about adapting and finding your own practice now. We're going to learn the fundamentals in this course, and then near the end I will show you how to adapt them to your own needs and your own desires when it comes to the tarot. Tarot is primarily used as a form of divination. So to understand the tarot, we need to understand what is divination and how and why we use it. The history of tarot and the history of divination itself is extensive, but what I've tried to do is condense it down into some of the key points so that you can have a well-rounded understanding. And in the description below are going to be options for reading if you do want to take it further. So this lesson is a bit more cozy, so grab yourself a tea or a coffee, whatever you feel like. I've got a tea. Get comfy, get cozy, and let's learn the history of tarot. So let's start. What is divination? Divination has been undertaken by humankind from time immemorial. We have cave paintings that show evidence of divination and trying to commune with the gods and otherly spirits. At one point it was a survival tool. It was a lifeline. When the world was so violent and unpredictable, being able to discern the will of the gods, the land spirits, trying to find out if there was going to be a plague or famine or war was a lifeline. It was how we survived. Divination has many definitions because the practice is not standardized. It developed pretty concurrently across many different civilizations. They all had their own way of doing it. So the definitions of divination do change. It's often to do with omens, prophecy, spirit, determining the will of the gods. It normally has a ritualistic aspect to it as well. But the Cambridge Dictionary defines divination as the skill or act of saying or discovering what will happen in the future. The act of divination is often ritualistic in practice and connected to some kind of spiritual aspect, whether it's religion or a folk practice. As we've already mentioned, divination used to be just a fundamental part of life, and those that seem to have a gift or through intense practice would be called upon to divine information from the natural world, looking for omens, prophecy, reading the cloud formations and seeing if there was going to be a storm, looking at the way that a river flowed and seeing if there was going to be a famine or war. Often information would want to be gained from the coming season, particularly in terms of farming, agriculture, and anyone who lived off of the land in a certain way. People who undertook divination had many names: diviners, seers, oracles, soothsayers, and many, many more. Across cultures, across traditions and religions, people that have undertaken this practice have had a bunch of different names, depending on what they did for their own community and what their role in it was. They all are slightly different based on time period, on culture, religion, area of the world, and they are constantly evolving and changing even through to this day. There are many different forms of divination, and you will often see these words ending in mancy: cartomancy, divination using playing cards; oneromancy, divination of dream interpretation. Often if it ends in mancy, it is a form of divination. And historically, anything was used as a form of divination. Everything from the elements, from ritualistic sacrifice, using dice, using playing cards. We have always found a tool to use for divination. Divination is not fortune telling. And while today the rituals and practices of divination and fortune telling may look the same, they have very different intentions and different outcomes. Fortune telling is aimed at finding out information specific to a person's life. When will they get married? When will they have kids? Will they face illness? Will they come into fortune? Whereas divination is generally a ritualistic practice that is connected to religion or spirituality, as the method is used to divine universal will or relay messages from another power. There are crossovers between fortune telling and divination, especially today. Tarot is fundamentally a tool that could be used for fortune telling, a tool that could be used for divination, a tool that could be used for many other things, or none of those things. It's a tool just like astrology, like a crystal ball, like a pendulum. Modern day divination is very different from its historical counterparts, so you'll often see the line between the two being blended. Fortune telling and divination today can look very similar, whereas they were very separate practices historically. When it comes to divination, it's a very individual practice. Some people will like to use elemental divination. I often do. I like elemental divination, or some people use tools for divination. I use the tarot. Some people might use a pendulum. Some people might use scripture. Today, some will still use divination to interpret the will of the gods. I do. I have that as part of my practice and part of my own spirituality. Some will use it as a tool for psychology, with each card being a different journal prompt, an idea for something to think about, a wider concept to start exploring. Some will use it as fortune telling to see when you're going to move, where you're going to move. Are you going to meet the perfect person? And some will use it, like me, to unpick internal muckiness. My view of tarot is I will use it to unpick whatever's going on under the surface. What am I not bringing up? What am I not willing to see? So I use it both as a tool for psychology, as a tool for fortune telling, and as a tool for divination. It really is something that you can make your own practice. Over time, you will realise your own understanding of the tarot, how it works and how it fits into your everyday life. That's not something that you need to have decided right now. But let's look specifically more at the tarot. The tarot did not begin as a divinatory system. It began as a game. Let's take it back slightly further. It is thought that the paper playing card originated in China around the 900s. By the 11th century, the paper playing card had reached the Mamluk Sultanate of ancient Egypt, who stylized it into the 52 card with 4 suits and a couple court cards that we know today as the earliest form of a deck in the way that we know it. The earliest European mention of the paper playing cards in the deck that we know today are in 1377 from Switzerland and Spain and Italy. They had spread rapidly thanks to the invention of woodblock printing. There are many different writings about the types of games that were played and the opportunities of use from these card decks. The Italians created a game called the Taronfi, later called the Tarocchi, And the earliest mention we have of this game is around the 1440s. These cards were beautiful. They are a true work of art. They were all hand painted, not wood block printed, and they contained so much imagery and colour, often containing iconography of important houses of the day or royalty. They are truly beautiful works of art. The Tarot Fee had 4 card suits with a 1 to 10 of pip cards that we would see in a normal deck. Plus they expanded out the court cards, and then they added what we now call the major arcana. This was a 22 card trump deck. The common suits that we see in a set of playing cards today, the diamonds, hearts, spades and clubs, are a French invention. They were quite easy to print, easy to manufacture, so they got shipped widely and became popular around France and England, and that is why we see them so commonly everywhere today. Divination was done with the traditional French playing cards. The Tarot de Marseille is one of the oldest decks that we have in use today. It began as well as a game, and it wasn't used as tarot and as we know it today until much, much later. But it's a nearly complete deck, and again, very beautiful and quite close to modern playing cards. The artwork of the trump cards especially, you can see the shades of it in modern tarot cards. In the 14th and 15th century, when these decks were published widely around Europe, cartomancy followed it pretty soon. As humans, we've always been looking for tools for divination, so when we got a new set of playing cards, it became an easy tool to use. One figure in particular was fundamental in developing the art of tarot as we know it today, and that is Jean-Baptiste Alliette, known professionally as Atelier, which is his surname backwards. He would be one of the first to create a standardized divinatory method around tarot, around the deck of the Tarot de Marseille. This was in the 1700s. He was a tarot reader, a tarot researcher, and esoteric researcher. He would become the first known professional to actually make a living from the tarot. He would publish multiple works, the most famous being The Way to Recreate Yourself with the Deck of Cards Called Tarot. Alliette bridged that gap between cartomancy and the Tarot Fee, and the tarot like we know it today was born. Often if you read books about the tarot that were published between the 60s and early 2000s, it's going to tell you that it's this ancient mystical art whose knowledge was lost, and that's not quite true. The tarot as we know it today is a fairly young invention, being really spearheaded and pioneered by Jean-Baptiste Alliette in the 1700s, with lots of really famous cartomancers like Lenormand influencing his ideas. Tarot did not begin as a divinatory tool, it began as a game and it evolved. And that's what I think is beautiful about it. It's perfectly okay to enjoy the tarot and understand that it began as a game and it has become something more through public practice and consciousness and the desire of people to find a new way to seek guidance, often in the darkest of nights. The history of tarot, as we've seen, has travelled the world. Through China and the invention of paper playing cards, through Egypt and the development of a deck, through Europe and the creation of these beautiful artworks that would become the systems that we know today. And you, undertaking tarot, are becoming part of that really wonderful lineage. And that leads us all the way through to 1910, when the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that we know and love came to be. From this, we have so many different types of deck. Some that have followed the Rider-Waite-Smith design, some that have forged their own path, some that have created their own entirely new systems of tarot. But that's next week's lesson on the anatomy of tarot. We'll be going over the structure of a tarot deck, but also where it's changed, a few of the different systems, and the developments around tarot. I'll also show you how to pick a really good beginner tarot deck if you haven't got one already, and tell you a little bit about how I picked my first deck. The history of tarot is rich and colourful. It is extensive and it is constantly evolving. And I love being part of this evolution. and I hope you do too. I welcome you to find your place in the history of tarot, finding your way that it works, and finding your place in this wonderful art form. So, homework. Optional homework, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. I'm going to give you 3 journal prompts. Write your answers down somewhere. We'll be coming back to them at the end of this course so that you can see how much you have changed or developed over the course of a year. So first of all, how do I believe the tarot works? Why do I want to learn tarot? And where do I want to go with the tarot? Like I said, we will be revisiting these at the end of the course, so make a note somewhere and keep it safe, whether it's on your computer, whether it's physically in a note and sealed. Feel free to share your musings on your answers in the description under this video. If you are in either of my tarot tiers or my Patreon, you will be able to share it in our private chat. And remember, if you don't want to be part of the groups, I do private one-to-one mentoring sessions where if you need to ask any in-depth questions about the tarot, you can book 30 minutes or an hour with me and we will dive deep into an area of the tarot that maybe you are struggling with. So I'll see you next week for the anatomy of a tarot deck. Please be focused on me. I really hate this teapot. I bought it on a whim and I've just made a huge mess. It looks cute. It looks cute, but I hate it.